Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm Nate the Barbarian, your humble host. And as always, I am not alone. We got another crew member, Phil Heimlich, and he's scheduled to join us very, very shortly. But today we got the voice of reason, aka Kevin Aldridge. How you doing, Kevin?
Doing good, man. Happy Monday or Tuesday. I'm sorry.
Yeah, happy Tuesday.
It's our Monday. It's the first show of the week. So
Cool. And Tarris Troy Horton, how you doing, Tarris?
Doing well. Happy to be here today. Very happy.
And I said Phil, aka Uncle Phil, aka Sexy Phil. Matter of fact, look at the timing. Look at the timing with this guy.
What's up?
I'm sorry, timing with me?
Perfect timing.
Well, I have a statement to make, by the way, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. Is this show becoming some kind of a tabloid deal? I mean, I look at the list of topics, and it's like, is Saquon Barkley, we're getting back. This is like the sexy red stuff. I thought this was a kind of a deep show with like real heavy political topics. But if that's the way we're going, then I do think we might want to do sometime a segment on Bill Belichick. You know he is, right? He used to be coach of the Patriots. He's now the head football coach at UNC. He is my age. There's a story in the paper today about it. And he's got like a 24-year-old girlfriend. So he has become my inspiration.
No, Phil. No.
I mean, you got to have heroes in life, guys. You know that.
Hey, if that's what gets you where you're trying to get to, Phil, I don't hate you on that. Nothing wrong with that, man.
Kevin used to be mine, but let's face it, what Bill Belichick has done is just it's beyond. It's beyond the pale. It's what can I say?
Yeah, I don't think I could go for a 24-year-old. I don't think my wife would approve. So
yeah. And
I don't think she'd approve if the woman was 80, actually. I would say.
Older man, younger woman, Shannon Sharp comes to mind. It's the first thing that comes to mind.
25,000
caught up with it. And you know what? I mean, hey, that's the game that people play these days. It's the game's a high stake, high value being you one of those guys. People think you got a lot of money. You're out there. You're going to attract certain kind of people. And that
that changes everything because I did a little math and Belichick is worth about 100 times or more what I'm worth. So maybe I ought to stick to maybe some of the older ones.
That might be a safe bet. That might be.
By the way, do you know Caroline Leavitt, Trump's spokesbabe? The White House. Do you know she's
propagandist?
Married? She's in the 20s. She's like 27. Yeah. She's married to a guy in his 60s.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow, I didn't know that. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. See, I got heroes all over the place.
But Shannon Sharp pushed back this week because people were like, why are you messing around with a younger woman? And he said, listen, I'm looking for somebody that basically is not my age but fits my wage. So he's like, look, if I got the money to attract a certain type of woman, be it she be young or whatever, that's what I'm gonna do. And you know what? That's his business. And if he finds some women that go along with it, God bless them and whatever they're gonna do over there. That's their business, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
As long as he doesn't, knock her around. That's, I think, what the issue is.
Yeah.
If
right, the allegation, right.
Right. Yeah. If you're purely
every time somebody's charged with a crime, they're guilty. You know that. Come on.
See, that's what Republicans want you to think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if you're purely talking about the age gap, you're right, Nathan. That's, to each his own. That's everybody's personal business. I do think whether you're talking about older men and younger women or older women and younger men, I think in some cases you eventually run into what they call the life experience gap and the conversation gap. I think there's a certain number of things that a 56-year-old man is not going to have in common with a 19-year-old girl outside of the obvious, right?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me.
Which
the
is clearly
obvious,
the nature.
Would you enlighten our audience? The obvious. You talking about their conversation?
If you read those text messages. If you read those text messages, I think exactly the type of conversation they enjoy having with each other. If you read those texts,
I said I didn't, but I'm blushing just
if that's as much intellectual stimulation as you need, then I guess that works out. I guess that works out for you. And look, there's some men that, we just be honest, they don't much value conversation with women. They would much rather have it just be straightforward, and hey, this is what this is about. This is what that's about. And we
feel like I'm getting the birds and the bees talk right now.
I've got an interesting perspective that we talk about in the barbershop sometimes that women, when they go through perimenopause and menopause, right? And they're 45 to 55, they go through perimenopause and menopause, and it's an interesting dynamic that my wife's going through it, so I'm studying, I'm being supportive as I possibly can. But in that specific time frame in life, women devalue men. It's a known fact. Women get more divorced during this time of life. They divorce
really?
Good men.
Is that right?
Because they devalue men. They put them down. They get the hot flashes and they start putting them to the target. And this is scientifically proven. And my wife studies this, so I'm very happy to be a part of my wife's journey as we go through. So
I hope she doesn't study it too much in depth.
She does. Yeah, she
Tarris.
does. That's her job.
Okay, all right. I don't want her to get any ideas.
That's her job. She does.
I'm
going somewhere with this, Phil. So when men are being emasculated and beat down for so long, after a while, and they're beat down for a while, and then the women divorce them and they put them out, and as a 52-year-old middle-aged man, you start reaching and you start looking for things to make you feel better as a man. So they go for younger women who are easier to manipulate because they are financially able to give them things and control the situation, and it helps them in their self-esteem. Some men go out and buy convertibles to make them feel good and start messing with younger women. I myself, as a conscious man, as my wife is going through menopause and that kind of stuff, and I see other women do it, I'm conscious about it. I'm going to try to find hobbies like doing other things so I don't fall a victim to the Shannon Sharps and all those kind of people who are maybe going through the devaluing stage of this specific time in life, and they reach out for other things.
I feel like I've just listened to like Dr. Ruth, or something, But here's the thing: you don't have to worry.
I know. And it might be a little bit, but it might, like some people's level of intelligence. It's way.
It's kind of close to home with some of us. I'm not going to say who, but here's the difference: that Belichick doesn't have to worry about that, because by the time his woman gets to that menopause, he'll be dead.
The woman that he had, the woman that he had,
no problem
currently.
there.
Like saying up until the woman he got now. And I'm saying just in general, not just Belichick, Shannon Sharp, all the women his age are probably going through menopause or perimenopause, where they don't want to have anything to do with their men at that time. It's something they go through. And so when they're devaluing the men of their age, the men are like, hey, I don't have to go through this. I can go find me a younger woman. That's something that we're messing around with that theory in the barbershop theory.
Yeah, I want when y'all kicking around the theory, can y'all add the part where you don't say, women are devaluing men? I just feel like that's an oversimplification, slightly sexist as to what's really going on with women at that time. I think a better way to put it, if we're looking for like a little one-liner, would be like, it's a time when women start to value themselves and kind of figure out what's best for them.
But that's not
No,
true.
all this anti-male blah blah blah.
That wouldn't be true.
I think I
That
go
wouldn't
with
be true.
Tarris's
That wouldn't be true.
definition more than yours.
Take the nipple out of your mouth, right? Wipe your own behind and act like a man. Devaluing men. They're not devaluing men.
Okay.
They're simply valuing themselves and starting to ask themselves, how do I want to spend the last 20, 30 years of my life? And they may decide, I don't want to be with this guy no more. It just don't work for me, because they say, you know what? I know what the Bible and what religion tells me, but I'm not happy. And I'm not really getting to my full potential with this dude anymore. And you should leave. But that don't mean she's devaluing men.
Anybody,
No, I push back on all of that.
If you push back and if you don't agree with me, I encourage you to do some research on this topic. I mean, seriously, research on perimenopause and menopause. Research on it's one of the last. It's one since the 1990. It was the last time that it's been researched, and then they cut the funding for it, and it's been the least studied. Something that every woman goes through this. Every woman goes through this. And
so now you value. So now your side values studies. Your side. Let me make it political. You voted for the guy and the administration that's now
treating you like he treats me
on all levels.
Tarris,
but now you want to talk to me about the value of study.
I'm talking about it from. I'm talking from anecdotal, from my wife being a mental health therapist and my wife going through this, and me supporting her and educating myself alongside of my wife as she educates other women who are open-minded.
Now that I know she's a mental therapist, I can see why you two are
open-minded enough to explore this situation. Some people will shut it off. I say that now. Oh no, I'm not good. And just like other things. But I'm saying,
I love that
we're exploring this.
I love that you're sensitive to this topic, and because I can see you're sensitive to it, I'm hipping to you to another level of your sensitivity. You need to add to your game and stop calling it and looking at it and framing it from a male lens. It ain't about you, it's about her. And so rather than saying they're devaluing men in that time, and I think you're right, statistically, to my knowledge, as I sit here, that a lot of women do leave their marriages around that time you're talking about. But I think it's more about them valuing themselves in the context of the rest of their lives, rather than them saying that they devalue men.
Hey Nathan, and let me add just a little piece to this, because I think value is the question here. And I think as the longer you're with somebody and as you grow old together, like marriages are work, man. They're investments. And if you don't spend the time, this is both from the male and the female side. Like if you don't take the time investing and valuing in your partner, and that means also paying attention to how you're changing and how they're changing, it is a value proposition, because I think most people generally tend to move on from their partners or find different things because they're seeking something that they're not getting currently within the confines of their relationship. And I think particularly for older men, look, there's nothing that, and I think this is across the board, nothing is absolute, but I think most men would find it ego stroking for a younger woman to take interest in them and to find some sort of attraction in them. And that is very validating, I think, for a lot of older men. And they easily can fall prey or victim, to those types of things, particularly if they feel like that's not something that they're getting that's not something that they're getting at home. Likewise, I think it's true for men that have to be equally as attentive to their wives to make sure that they're taking care of home and making sure that their wives are feeling valued, because it's that estrangement when you're with somebody for so long. You fall into routines, you stop getting the flowers, making the compliments, I think that's more a product of I think that's more of a product of it than menopause or any type of midlife crisis. So to speak. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
yeah.
that that naturally, as you get older, you got to
You know
put in
what?
more work, and that's on many different levels.
Like yes and no. It's just that what men don't realize because you don't really pay attention. But if you're really paying attention, women deal with a whole lot silently. And so all of that could be true. But you could be in a marriage which on your side and on her side on a lot of levels is clicking on all the boxes. And she or he still may arrive at the point in which they decide that I want to live the rest of my life not in a marital union.
Sure.
That's what and that's what we don't we always teaching people that when your marriage breaks up, that means somebody did something wrong. It don't mean that. It just means that they are now at a different place in their life. They might see themselves differently. They might see marriage differently. They might be looking the last 20, 30 years of their life thinking, how do I want to do this? And I just feel like
You're saying
I'm
that's
saying
okay,
that's
Nathan. You're saying you're
absolutely
okay with
okay, no
that.
matter what your
I
religious
disagree
views
too.
I
are.
disagree. I
I
disagree. I
Because
disagree.
bet
what's
Kevin
the
disagrees
alternative then?
too.
That means people are just unhappy in
You
marriages
work
just because
through
of
it.
Yeah,
religion.
I'll tell
You
you the
work through it.
alternative.
You work through
I'll
it.
tell you. Kevin's a bit Bible expert. He can correct me. But as I understand marriage in the Bible, is it comes down to that expression, love is a choice. In other words, when you say you go to the altar and you say till death do us part, it doesn't say
Yeah.
until I get tired of being with you. It doesn't say until I want something more exciting. And it's the commitment itself, which I would say enriches the marriage. If it's simply like, okay, oh yeah, I love you, but when I just don't feel like you're meeting my needs anymore, I'm out of here. There's no security in that. So I
And
respectfully disagree that it's okay for somebody just to hit the road. Now, if the husband or wife is like an adulterer, particularly a constant adulterer, that's fine. The
let
Bible
me let me
talks
let
about
me
that too
clarify. Let me
as a
clarify what
legitimate
I was talking
reason.
about because my wife in the comment section, that's crazy. Me and my wife are in a very loving, supporting, very supportive relationship all the way around. Ain't nothing, ain't no devaluing going on either way. I was saying and making a statement. You can look it up if you want to. The majority of marriages, more than 50%, I'd say 60 to 70% of marriages that happen in between the ages of 45 to 55-year-old women are initiated by women. And the studies, when you start breaking it down, they say they don't know why they're divorcing their good men. That's all I'm saying. And that's all I say. That was just a theory. I didn't mean for it to go to somebody doing some sort of like me pointing the finger and saying it's a personal. The reason why I personalized it is because my wife is a mental health therapist and she teaches a menopause and perimenopause class. And me being a supportive husband, I'm right there and I want to learn every piece of that so I can be a supportive husband for my wife. Let's just clarify that in chat quickly.
Listen, I
Hey,
love all of that energy, man. I love that whole vibe. I was just adding that small yet profound correction to the way that you were framing it. That was it.
Right. Okay.
Hey, and I want to say to all of our ladies in the chat, because I see a lot of them who are responding to that. Remember, we have a link if you want to come on, because I know we got 4 men on here talking about, and God bless Nathan for trying to interject, but he's still coming at it from the male perspective. So try as he might, he can't represent our female contingent.
And
So if there are any
I wasn't
ladies,
female bashing. I
if
wasn't
there are
female
any
bashing at
ladies in
all.
the chat who want to come on, reminder that there's a link. You don't have to be on camera. If you want to stay off camera, you can just come on and add your 2 cents to the pod. We love to have you on. We love you.
However, there's one exception. You got to say if the woman is involved in on any level with any of us, she's not allowed to be on the air. Okay, because we all have fragile egos, so things could get said that could be very
And I agree.
painful.
I
So
agree with
I just
Janice.
put that one
Nathan has a very
exception.
more a mature way of explaining it. My relationship with my how I deal with things, we deal with things straight up. We're gonna call it what it is. That's just how we. Some people want sugarcoat. Some people. What I spoke on, like I said, it wasn't to disparage any woman. I'm sitting here saying I'm on the side of women. I was raised by a woman, got 3 sisters who I love dearly, and who I want to know when they're going through something. I want to know what I need to do to be right alongside them to any kind of like suffer in silence. I want to be their landing board where they can talk to me and I can have empathy as much as I possibly can have from a man's perspective.
All right. This is different. Typically we hit a topic. but we just did an ad lib thing. That was good. But let's get into a topic. So today is marks the first 100 days of the Trump administration. And some folks are saying, as you see the headline there, Trump has kept many of his priorities while also testing the balance of power. I would add a few other ways to describe it. But first 100 days to the crew, how would you describe it? What do you think? First 100 days of Trump term 2.
I think that headline is 100% accurate. I think Trump, to this point, has done pretty much everything he campaigned on and said that he was going to do. Well, maybe not everything, but he's done a vast number of things that he promised that he said he was going to do. And I think we're seeing the results of what that is: the chaos, the calamity, the hurt on working class people. He certainly is testing the balance of power and institutions. He's challenging educational organizations, holding funding over governments and different agencies. This is what this man said he was going to do. This is what Project 2025 told you that he was going to do, that he denied having any knowledge of or any inclination to implement. So for a man who is a notorious liar and stretcher of the truth, I have to say, when it comes to what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, he has kept his promises. Now it's up to the people to determine whether that's a good thing, whether that's a good thing for them or not. I personally don't think it's been a good thing for the country. I don't think it's been a good thing for working class people. And, we got 1,300 plus more days of this garbage. And so I expect that things will get worse before they get better.
I'll go next. First 100 days, not really. I mean, the immigration thing, I think he did what he's supposed to do on the immigration thing. Is other than that, the economy, what he said he was going to do with the economy, I think he's failing on that. What he did with Ukraine and how he's teeter-totter with Ukraine and Russia and how he thinks he's doing. I've never been a Trump guy. I voted for Trump because it was better than the alternative, in my opinion. But the only thing, in my opinion, that Trump has done good for this country is get the illegal immigration stuff together. And I see him trying to reach out to HBCUs, signing that executive order to make sure that they don't have to worry about coming back for funding, reaching out for the public school to funding for the HBCU pipelines, and just the executive order that he signed dealing with the HBCUs. Other than that, I'm not a huge fan of Trump. And I think that, like we've said, if we roll these tapes back, I said, Trump's going to do all this stuff for 100 days. Elon Musk's going to be on his way out after the first 100 days from the Doge. And Elon Musk is on his way out. And then for the next couple years, Trump's going to go around on this tour, like he's going to start tonight in Michigan, which you're going to see mostly of, like I've told you before. They're going to take him around and they're going to take him on like these Trump rally things that he did before, like when he was on his campaigning trail. So now it's going to be like I will call it the Donald Trump narcissistic tour to keep Democrats enamored in Trump, anti-Trumpism, Trump, anti-Trump hate. So the more the Democrats stay focused on Donald Trump and Donald Trump, we'll see at the midterms if that correlates into them winning the House seats and the Senate seats that are going to come up for. If they're going to use, because you can already tell the Democrats they're doing the same playbook that they did to try to beat Trump for the election. Trump hate, Trump hate, Trump hate, Trump hate. I don't know if that's going to continue to work or if it's not going to work. It could work or it couldn't work. I don't believe it's going to work because the Republicans are going to be working on midterms in 2026 while the Democrats are still working on or thinking about Donald Trump.
You want to follow up that, Phil?
I did one of my own podcasts on this, and the title of it was Donald Trump has kept his promises, and I pointed that out, but I said, and that's not a compliment. And I mentioned that you guys, I was sort of addressed this to the people who voted for him, and I said, look, the one thing you can't say, and Kevin really said this, the one thing you can't say, and I'm talking about, like, I listen to some of these commentators like MSNBC, and they go, we didn't vote for this. We didn't vote for this. Hey, yes, you did vote for it. as Kevin said, he said exactly what he's going to do. So it's my attitude is, hey, no whining, if you voted for him. Now I got a lot of comments from people who said, I'm not whining, I love it, I think it's been great what he's done.
Hey, Nathan, one more thing before you get into your flow, I did want to add. I take that back. I think I corrected this. I said he did most of his promises. I do think it is important to highlight promises that he didn't keep. That he promised that he was going to lower the price of your groceries and all of your other things, and that the economy was going to turn around. That did not happen. In fact, he made an economy that was in recovery, that was in a bounce back. He's made it worse. So when I say that he's kept most of his promises, he's done most of the things that he said he was going to do with regards to tariffs, give you some of the things on the border, cracking down on DEI, the Doge thing, whatever you think of how that's turned out. Those are the things that he said he was going to do that he has kept. What he has not lived up to is ending the war in Ukraine on day one. Ain't happened. Making the economy better, lowering the prices of your groceries and making your individual life better. Ain't done that. He's made it worse. For those of you, I get everybody's not in the stock market and don't have a 401k. But if you are near retirement, you got to be pulling your hair out right now, because with the losses that you've sustained in terms of what he's doing with the tariffs, you may have to wind up working a couple more years because of what your losses have been, unless you have some sort of turnaround and recovery. So I did want to make that, because I think that's an important point to say, because, you know, when I say he kept most of his promises, he has done most of what he said he's going to do. But I think those are some very specific things he also promised, and that many people say, quote unquote, say they stake their vote on, that he absolutely has not done. In fact, he's failed miserably. Sorry. Now I'll let you go ahead and get your flow in.
Yeah, I mean, I keep seeing people in the media saying he kept his promises. He hasn't kept his promises. He's kept a lot of his grievances. Same old grievances on black and brown people with his immigration policy. Same old grievances about tariffs that he's been blathering about since the 1980s. If you really follow any of the stuff when Donald Trump, it's the same old playbook. Same old grievances against the people who didn't vote for him. You know.
Yeah, but he said what his playbook was in the campaign. He told you, he said he was going to get rid of DEI. He loves Putin.
Yeah.
He's always said that. I mean, the tariffs, he said in the campaign, he goes, tariffs are a beautiful thing. So, you know, you can criticize him, but I don't think you can say, oh, we're so surprised what he's done, because he said, I am going to be your retribution. And man,
I'm not arguing against, you know,
I thought
no,
he
he
said
hasn't.
that
He kept his
He
promises.
kept his
You know, as Kevin just laid out there. Most of the things he said he was actually going to do in terms of grocery prices going down, he hasn't done anything about that. He's backtracked and said that basically he was just lying about, you know, ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. He's backed away from his tariff policies with most of the world nations. And I mean, the only thing that Donald Trump is really doing is enriching himself. And I wish that the media would spend and a lot more people, when they talk about this, would talk about it in that term, instead of just, you know, it's so lazy intellectually just to say, oh, he's doing a lot of what he said he was going to do. It's like no other thought or analysis deeper than that. The man is a danger to every last one of us. Stop playing with this. Stop playing with this. The man is a danger. Let me put this headline up again. This headline, along with most of the headlines I read, primarily from mainstream sources, I think this was, I'm not sure who this was, actually. It might be CNN or Fox. I can't tell. I can't remember. First 100 days, that don't tell the story. Trump is a danger to every last one of us. Every last one of us.
They're both true. They're not contradictory, Nathan. He's kept his promises.
Trump
and
is a danger.
He's a
this headline is burying the lead. The lead is Trump is a danger to every one of us in every way you can imagine. Like, what they've done to the federal government has crippled its ability to do the various jobs, most of which was protecting citizens, right? This is critical. What's happening with the bond market is critical. What's happening in terms of the reordering of trade partnerships around the United States, because all the nations are sick of Donald Trump and therefore us. What this has done to make China more palatable on the international stage. I mean, Trump in 3 months has further helped China become the supreme superpower of the 21st century. And they talk about he kept some of his promises. It's like I'm Sarah Connor and I'm trying to tell people like this is serious, and people just want to go back to sleep. This headline doesn't even scratch the surface of what is really going on, not even just nationally, but internationally. And it's just a lot of this is being covered here or there, but it's not a whole lot of concerted, concentrated focus on just how much of a danger Donald Trump is, because
Yeah,
everybody
I
wants to be
disagree with
appeased.
that. Yeah, I
Everybody
disagree.
wants to appease him.
Yeah, I disagree with that assessment, Nathan, of in terms of what the media coverage has been on Donald
Okay, now
Trump.
let me add a caveat. Let me add a caveat before we get started,
Okay.
because you did it early. Let me do it. The only caveat I would ask is I would add to that assessment, because it's a sweeping generality, is progressive and or digital media. But when I look at those mainstream sources, that's exactly what I see. But go right
Nobody's
ahead.
watching that no more.
Yeah, and here's what I would say, man. As somebody who works in this every day and reads a ton of stuff and looks at a ton of stuff every day, I can tell you absolutely 100% that is just not true. Whether you're talking about
What part of it
mainstream
is not true,
or
Kevin?
whether you're talking about digital mediums where people are discussing
I
this.
just gave you digital media. I'm talking about primarily.
No, I'm talking
sources.
about mainstream sources too. There is a ton of reporting.
So where am I wrong in my assessment?
Well, I think you're wrong in your assessment where you're saying that this stuff isn't being covered, or it isn't taken seriously, or is not done in depth. I tell this to people.
What I said, I want to clarify.
Okay,
if you're
please do.
Let me get it right. So what I said is I see it here and there, but I don't see it concerted effort, right, from mainstream sources alerting us to the various dangers that the Trump administration poses, both nationally and internationally. Me saying it to you tells you that somebody's reporting on it, because I'm able to tell you this. But
Right.
I don't see enough of it. I don't see a conservative laser beam focus on it. I see a lot of appeasement. I see a lot of, here's what one side says, and here's what the other side says.
I just disagree, because I disagree, and I get it, because I'm a different animal than most people, because this is my job and I live it and I see it every day. And and this is part of the problem. This is why I'm saying that, of course, perception is reality. Look, most people are busy. Most people every day are taking care of their families. They're going to work. They maybe catch something on the news or watch their favorite podcast or their favorite TV. They're not combing the New York Times. They're not combing the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Cincinnati. They're not looking at those news organizations and reading every one of them cover to cover every day. At most, they're skimming and getting what they get on their timeline. And we all know what the algorithm does with that. And so there are a lot of factors that work against what people see and their knowledge base every day. And most people are not going out searching for this stuff. Why? Because they're living their lives on a day. They're living their lives on a daily basis. But I guarantee you, if you
now you've switched it to people and you've taken the focus off of the media.
No, I'm not taking the focus off the media, because what I'm trying to tell you is it's there. There is an obligation on the consumer to go find it. And I've said this many times.
There's also an obligation on the media to alert people to danger.
They do, Nathan. Look, we send out news alerts every day at the Inquirer to people's emails that you get notifications on your phone. There are a million different ways that the media is trying to alert you to that. Most people cut off their notifications because they tired of getting it. I get that it don't match with your little perspective that you got, bro, but I'm trying to let you know that there is a ton of information. You got to go find it. And the media is doing the best that it can to get it to you. Again, I just got done talking to you about the algorithm. I just got done talking to you about the algorithm that social media uses, that you don't even get Nathan, you don't even get a fraction of the news that is out, because the algorithm don't show it to you. And there are studies that show that the vast majority of people use social media as their contact for news. They're not going to Cincinnati.com. They're not going to these places. They're relying on their social media.
Yeah, and they're feeding you
what I know, bro. I'm telling you what I know.
I know that's what you know, but that doesn't get to the heart of what I'm saying. This conversation for me is not about how people get their news. I know how people get their news. It's about what the news is producing as it relates to Donald Trump.
You're wrong.
As I told you, I see it here and there, but I don't see a bright red blinking, hey, danger, danger, danger sign. What I do see, primarily from mainstream media, like progressive digital media, oh, they're going hard in the paint. But from mainstream media, they're turned on their backs with their legs up, waiting for Donald Trump to come and scratch their belly and tell them good boy. That's what I see. A lot of appeasement, a lot of here's what liberals think, here's what conservative thinks. But I don't see the focus on the nonsense and calling him out, even on the levels that I saw during the first time.
You ought to talk to some conservatives then, and let the conservatives tell you what they think about mainstream media coverage of Donald Trump.
How would that be valuable to what we're talking about?
It absolutely is valuable, because conservatives would tell you that that's all it is.
Of course they will tell you that.
Conservatives would tell you that 90%. Conservatives would tell you that 90% of mainstream media coverage is negative toward Donald Trump.
Once again, has nothing to do with my point. Of course, conservatives would tell you that. That's why there's no value in bringing them in. We know what they would say. That has nothing to do with what I'm seeing. This is just my opinion. Now, of course, you got a different lens. You're actually in the newsroom, so I would defer to you, bro. But 100%, the media is like, come scratch my belly, Donald Trump. Come tell me I'm okay. Come tell me we're one of the good ones. And they are succumbing to the pressure. Not everybody, but mainstream media, absolutely.
You think the New York Times hasn't been pretty tough on Trump?
I think they could be tougher. Yeah. I think they could be tougher. I think they were tougher in tone.
There is a difference in reporting, but wouldn't you agree that there's a difference between reporting news and editorializing? They have opinion columns, and the opinion columns I read in Washington Post, even the Washington Post, despite what though that's changing, but New York Times and other things I see, they're pretty hard hitting on Trump. But the news articles are designed to tell you what's happening. And if you read them, it tells you what he's doing. I'm just saying, very clearly.
Why did the Washington Post, you took them out? Why? Because appeasement.
Because Jeff Bezos is corrupt now. Just like
Most
CBS,
of the billionaires are corrupt.
You guys saw that, right?
That's what I was telling y'all last time about the 60 Minutes, and y'all acted like y'all didn't know what I was talking about. And now it's...
We're not talking about what Trump says about 60 Minutes. That's pure BS. I'm talking about the fact that the guy who's the longtime producer, if you read the article, just in this last week, he quit because he basically said that the corporate people are now telling us what to do. Yeah. I'm not going to ever. I've always done stories that I thought people needed to hear. I never took orders like that. And you guys all know the story. This billionaire Sherry Redstone is trying to sell the whole package as if she needs more money. And so she's basically, she's telling in 60 Minutes, hey guys, no more of these anti-Trump pieces and stuff. That's same thing with Bezos and Washington Post.
Maybe people were tired of hearing, or you think people were tired of hearing it? You know, that goes back to what I was saying in my when I was talking earlier. You guys are more focused on Donald Trump and what Donald Trump is doing.
Tarris,
instead of trying to find a viable
Donald Trump is trying to.
That's your lens. I don't think Donald Trump is taking her to a dictatorship.
Tarris, newsflash: Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
Right.
Okay, just so you know that. You keep saying like we shouldn't be talking about the things that he does. It impacts our lives, man.
It impacts our lives. I agree with that. But you guys are more focused. You guys are more focused on
what
Donald
else
Trump.
We talking about
on a solution in the midterms to beat Donald, because Donald Trump's over it. These 100 days are done. Now after the 100 days, now they're going to focus on midterms, and then after the midterms, January is going to come, and they're going to start focusing on policies and legislation in 2016. 2024 was election year. 2025, hold on, Phil, let me finish. 2025,
and guess what?
Trump 2025 is going to be a Trump year, and then 2026 is going to be a legislative year where they're going to start fixing all these executive orders that Trump written into order. They're going to start fixing it and weights and balances. And if the House of Republicans or House of Representatives and the Senate, they don't get it right, and not get it right, if they don't get their stuff together and get candidates that can beat Republicans, it's going to be in Donald Trump's hands even more. So that's why like you guys say, why aren't they shouldn't be giving Donald Trump this attention. They should be given attention to other things.
Now, here's where I think, you're both kind of right and you're both kind of wrong. I mean, Nathan is, or I shouldn't even say wrong. Here's where I think you're both right. Nathan is right. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. You cannot ignore what he is doing. And he does things that cannot be ignored. So you have to write about it. And that's part of his strategy. He borrowed that. Steve Bannon talks about this, about flooding the market. He floods the market with significant things, and he floods the market with junk. And the goal of that is to wear down the media as well as the public. And so here's where I think Tarris is right, is you do have a percentage, and I don't know what percentage it is, but it's a percentage of people who are overwhelmed by this stuff, and they tap out. They say, I'm tired of hearing about Donald Trump. I'm tired of the negativity every day. So I'm just not going to watch the news. I'm not going to turn on my TV. I'm not going to read the latest story that's on the news feed. I am just going to tap out for however long it takes from this cycle, because it's just too much negativity. I can't deal with it. So there is a portion of the populace that checks out. So I think, to Tarris's point, are people tired of talking about it? Yes, I think there are a percentage of people who are tired of Donald Trump, and they're tired of the continuous drumbeat. Now, for the people who are part of the resistance, who are part of the Donald Trump resistance, no, that's not you. That's probably not talking to you. But everybody ain't in the resistance, right? Everybody is not a diehard barbarian, not like Nathan, who's standing on the stump. It's like I said, a lot of people are just trying to live every day and are not living and dying with the day-to-day politics like some of the rest of us. And so I think that's where you guys are both speaking truth. From a media standpoint, you can't back down. You can't not cover it, because it's the president of the United States, and everything that he does and says has an impact.
Yeah, I hear you saying. I agree with you saying, but I still think you're underplaying the threat that Donald Trump poses to us. Even in what you just said there, it's kind of like, well, nah, this is different, but I get it. We can agree.
Can I make one more? Can I make one more?
I need
point.
to understand that. How did I underplay the threat?
Yeah, well, you just underplayed it. You just bear, some people are into politics and are really watching this stuff. Well, it's kind of like,
no, that's not an underplay. That's a reality. I mean, I'm just speaking facts. I'm speaking truth. That's not an underplay. You don't have to like it, but that's where some people are. That's not an underplay. That's the reality of what the feedback that we get.
Yeah, I'm just saying the way that you framed that, I think the framing of it underplays it, right? In my opinion. We can agree.
It could be overplayed too, but it's like people are more focused on Donald Trump, in my opinion, when they should be focused on, let's say, the Paula Whites, the preacher lady who is praying over everybody, the White House lady but everybody.
How does she get to the White House?
But everybody in her congregation that they're praying and they're singing all these songs, there ain't no black people in there. There ain't no brown people in there. Those are the people. How did Paula
White get to the White House?
Okay, you're right. Donald Trump brought her into the White House. Donald Trump went her.
You're saying Paula White?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. I didn't say anything about that. I said, look at the people.
Because she has a big outreach to black
culture vulturing. Culture vulturing is that? Yeah, culture vulturing. Oh yeah, and then I get it. It's a whole other topic. I just wanted.
Tries to talk back black slang. It looks ridiculous.
I just want to put that in there. People are more focused on Donald Trump whenever the real people are people like Paula White, who, as Phil are saying, they got a black church. She's from Mississippi. She grew up in black church, and she knows how to hoop and all that kind of stuff. So she's been put in position with Donald Trump to spread that out. But when you look out in the crowd and they're screaming, "My God is an awesome God," you don't see any brown or black people. That's the threat that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about Donald Trump. I'm worried about the people. Like you said, the people.
I just got to say it. So you're not worried about the guy that opened the door for the person that you're saying we should have a problem with. That don't make no sense, Terry.
When you're focusing more on the people you're focusing more on Donald Trump than you're all the people who are actually doing the work.
That's black Republican divergent tactics right there, folks. That's what they do. That's black Republican divergent tactics. Don't fall for it.
Hey, don't
fall for it. Let me move on. Something interesting happened.
That's like him calling me a socialist. It's uncalled for. It may be true, but it's uncalled for.
The banks has a new policy, and they have a 21 and over policy now during the main plaza. That's the little strip right there with the little bars and restaurants. If you know that area, it's the strip right between the Major League Baseball Stadium and the Freedom Center. It's a little strip right there, but a bunch of bars. So on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and they just kicked it off last Saturday, this past weekend. And from what I read in the Inquirer, there was no issues or anything like that. And but I want to get your thoughts on this. So basically you've got to show your ID. They're actually they rented rent a cops private security to check ID. It's blocked off with whatever you block off things with. I saw like some police tape and some chairs or something like that. And what they were saying is that they got a lot of complaints because a lot of teenagers, a lot of young people were on the banks on the weekends. And I guess they were over there with the patrons, and it was just, causing people to feel a certain kind of way. And so they came up with this idea. From what I read in the Inquirer article, they're spending about $250,000 between now and the end of the summer to try this out. But it's got mixed reviews, I guess. I saw some of the comments. A lot of people said they liked it. I think in the comments I read, more people said they thought it was a good idea that didn't, at least from what I read. But what do you think about this new bank's policy?
Just keep in mind, as the articles have said, that there have been 15 shootings there in the last 3 years. I think that gives an indication
You say
that
there,
there's
you
some
mean
issues.
in downtown area?
Banks,
but not
on the
there.
banks.
But they're
Look at the channel. Look at the Channel 9, whatever story it was that we all received. They showed a little map where all the dots. 2 people died. Total of 15 shootings.
Right, but the shootings,
banks.
and again, I could be wrong about this. To my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, or anybody else. But did the shootings happen in this particular area we're talking about? Or I thought it was around that area. Okay,
Not necessarily.
Yeah, that's consistent to my knowledge.
But
It's
is on
technically the
bank.
banks,
It
but
was
it's
on the
not that
banks
same
that
area
they
that
heard.
they've just now, got the 21 and over policy. But what do you think, Phil? Is this a good idea?
Yeah, I think it is a good idea. And the thing is, look at it this way. If you have, okay, technically the shootings were adjacent to it, but when people read about that many shootings in an area, first of all, they're not going to go down there. I mean, I wasn't aware about that until I read that. And, I think that let's face it, one of the guys who was interviewed in one of the stories made a good point. He goes, these kids aren't my customers. They're not coming and buying stuff. They're just hanging out. And yeah, I think after 10 o'clock, it's appropriate to keep things 21 over. I'm a little biased. When I was in city council, I introduced this teen curfew thing, okay, which a lot of people at first were against, but then they put it in place and everybody loved it. So I think this is just a general sense that kids don't need to be out on the street, at least on those, after 10. I really don't think so. And particularly in a place like that, which is basically a kind of a tourist place. And it is true. It is intimidating to see a whole group of kids sometimes getting in
When we
fights.
say kids, we're also saying like you could be 19, 20. That's not a kid. You're a young adult at that point, and you will not be allowed to get in there.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of. I have a 19-year-old, but he's a pretty good guy. But there's an awful lot of. I'd say kids. That covers kids, I guess, somewhat, at least high school age. Yeah, I think those people at that age, they get in trouble. They can cause
Yeah, I
some
think the
problems
main
too.
point of the age is that 21 is obviously the legal drinking age, and so I think that's why 21 was selected, because most of the places that you have down in and around that Banks area are bars or restaurants that serve alcohol, and so it's sort of, I think somebody said it in the piece, it's kind of like, what are you doing after 10 o'clock down? And most of the activities that people are engaged in, sort of after 10 o'clock down there usually revolve in that type of thing, drinking, revelry, that type of thing, which is not necessarily conducive for, people under the legal drinking age. And so when you think about it, if I'm a bar down there on the Banks, I'm not making any money off of a 20 and under. Particularly when my crowd is, people who are going to come and have a drink and hang out down there. I mean, look, the reality is that, downtown and the businesses there are a critical part, of maintaining, the core of the city. And they're always going to try to protect those interests and make sure that people feel safe. I mean, if people don't feel safe to come down to a Reds or a Bengals game or to come down and spend money at the Banks, quite frankly, it's not going to happen. And when you think about who are the folks who are most likely going to come down there, they're probably people who, live outside of, Cincinnati. Maybe they live in the suburbs or one of the suburban areas, and that may be the only time that they ever come downtown, is to take in a ball game or to visit one of the restaurants or whatever that's down there at the banks. I don't have a problem with it, mainly because it's not coming from tax dollars. The businesses down there ponied up. They took the proper routes to get the approval for it. They're paying for the security, so it's not your or my tax dollars that's being spent on it. It's them. I think the police chief also talked about how this will help save the city police resources, so they can maybe redirect those resources in other areas to serve other parts of the city, which is a good thing. And so I don't particularly have a problem with it. I mean, you gotta, again, if you're over 18, I think that's a little bit different. You're considered an adult at that age, but I think one would argue that, after 10 o'clock, if you are under the age of 18 or you're a teenager, you probably don't need to be hanging out, down at the banks anyway. At least not without some adult supervision at that time of night. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it'll be a good thing. It'll probably net some positive results for the banks.
Adult supervision at 19, Kevin? A
20-year-old? I said if you're under the age of 18. So if you're a high school teenager, that type thing. 18 to 20-year-old, I said in that comment, I think that's a little bit different, but I'm talking about the younger kids. Look, we just talked about this on the pod a couple shows ago, where you saw those young kids fighting out in front of the Aronoff. Like, that's exactly the type of thing that they're trying to prevent with this type of thing. Because I said at that time, if I'm the Aronoff and that happened out in front of my venue, that would have pissed me off, because I know that probably scared off a number of patrons who are going to look at that and say, this is why I don't come downtown.
Oh my gosh.
I believe
we are so fake. Can we stop being fake?
I'm about to get real with you. The Louisville did this probably 4th Street Live down probably about 2000. And what it turned into is the biggest legal discrimination against black and brown folks ever going down to 4th Street Live. And if it's not done right in the Door District down there at down here at the banks, it could be the same thing, where if your pants are too saggy, they won't let you in, because it's been that way downtown before.
It's strictly an age
That's what they
requirement.
say now,
That's it.
Phil. But how you ever been to the club?
Hey,
Hold on. No,
baggy pants.
Tarris, let me stop you, bro. In fairness, let's talk about what it is, not start adding things onto it that's from someplace else. We talking about the banks. We ain't talking about whatever it is that you talk about. So to Phil's point, it is a 21-year-old age restriction right now. Now, don't start making it into something that it ain't, bro.
Okay.
That's just
all right. Okay. So whenever you ever been to a nightclub? You ever been to a nightclub? I used to work in nightclubs.
I have been to a nightclub.
Okay, so you ever been turned away for Timberlands? You ever been turned away from a security guard with too much Anna and too much going on, trying to pat you down, turn you away because you got on some Timberlands? How do we know people from over the Rhine want to come down to enjoy a baseball game, go down to get a taco or something down on the banks during the Door District, and the security guard who's paid looks them up and down, and maybe as a collective through all the groups of the businesses get together and say, when they tell these security guards to profile these people when they come in, it's a possibility. And I can see if they're
reality terrorist, then that's when we can talk about it. When it becomes a reality, that's when we can talk about it. But this is the type of stuff that I just don't think is constructive to the conversation.
So okay, hold on.
You're talking about
whataboutism.
So when they start turning away black people because of how they dress, then I'll be 100% on your side and we can talk about it. But that ain't what we talk about right now. We're talking about an age restriction.
The age restriction will lead into some discrimination. You're going. I'd say 3 months. 3 months, we're going to see something down there talk about, they discriminating on us because I had on Timberlands, or I was wearing my pants were backward, or I got on the jogging pants. How many times have black people been, especially downtown Cincinnati? It's the worst. It's the worst when you go downtown. Cincinnati is the most discriminated or segregated place when it comes to nightclubs that I've ever been to in the United States of America. So what I'm serious, and I'm seeing it happening down in Louisville. So when they start coming up to them trying to get in, and they start saying no, you can't get in because of this, and this, we'll have that conversation, Kevin. But that was my take on this. That it's gonna happen. I give it 3 months until we'll have the news down there talk about. And probably be somebody from over the Rhine. Probably, and I hope it happens, and they start protesting down there just to give us a little bit more to talk about on Hot Mic.
Hey, listen, I thought he was cooking, Kevin. I'll be honest with you. Hey, listen, you're right. You may be right, Tarris. And this man right here is going to be at the center of it.
Exactly.
I don't know who this guy is, but there's nobody can tell me that you feel comfortable with him checking IDs and being some type of security guard down there. This is a potential problem. Danger, Will Robinson. This guy looks like he's 22. Now, how the hell do you put a 22?
So what? What's your? I understand. What's
He looks super young,
Phil.
He looks like he's 22.
I don't care how you. As long as
what
he's
you
over
mean
21,
you don't put a 22-year-old young man in charge of checking IDs when you got all kind of drunk, older, and all kind of types of people? That tells me there.
Okay, then fine. That's
I'm just reading.
They want to hire.
Phil, I'm good at reading between the lines. Work with me on this one. When I saw this image in the paper, I thought, oops, this is a problem waiting to happen. Because whoever said that he should be out there on the first weekend doing it is dead wrong. He just simply ain't old enough. Just period. Right off the top of the list, nothing else. Not to say anything else about him because I don't know. He's just not old enough. He's like 21 and 2 months. Checking IDs on the banks. How
do you know that, Nathan? How do you know how old that is? How do you know how old that man is?
Man, because I got a lot of talents, and one of them is
Well, you thought I was 52.
We are all in. I don't even want to go down there because he's down there.
I agree. I
don't even want to go down there, fellas, because he's down there. Tarris is absolutely right. Somebody's going to get messed up, and this man, I will not be surprised to find out that he is some way involved with it. And of course, I'm just having fun. I don't know that dude. I ain't trying to dox him or anything like that. I just saw danger. But you know what? When I saw this story and I'm listening to you guys talk, I thought, you know what? We don't give Cincinnati enough props. We really don't. Because, Cincinnati does a lot of things well that just don't get national attention. And in this particular case, in terms of being relevant, there's something that's on display that Cincinnati does very, very well that we just so many other things. T. Higgins got a contract, so we looking forward to the Bengals. There's a lot of stuff going on. Trump going in office, so I get it. I understand why it's not a focus, but one thing that we do very well is building barriers. We are very good at it. In fact, we are world class at building barriers, polite barriers. We're very good at that. And so when I saw this, I thought, this is so Cincinnati. We do it on all levels. It's just sad that it once again, when it comes to our youth, primarily our non-white youth, we are world class at building barriers between us and them. We are not so good at building bridges socioeconomically in a whole lot of different ways in this city. And so when I saw it, I thought, of course they did. I'm surprised they waited this long to do this. And then back to what you were saying, Kevin, the reason why I said we got to stop being fake, I'm not talking about you, but this narrative that people just don't want to be around fights, it's fights that's going to happen down there inside that barrier. Inside the Dora. You ain't been down there before. These drunk Red fans coming out there getting into fights all the time,
and they should be
bumping into each other. So they
should be dealt with.
Yeah, it does. But
that's the part of the conversation that I don't like. Look, if we're gonna keep it real, since we like to do that on this program, we like to keep it real while not acknowledging what is actually happening. We want to talk about and fabricate some stuff that might happen, but we don't want to talk about what actually is happening. And so if there are 15 shootings in and around that area, that is a problem. Just like you talk about underplaying the Donald Trump stuff, you're trying to underplay that. And that is a significant issue.
Tell me how this new 21 and over policy in any way insulates any of those people from a shooting.
Well, again, there's nothing
I think it's because the younger people tend to get involved in bad stuff more than
only younger people get into shootings.
We know for a fact through reporting that the violence is getting younger, and those who are perpetuating the violence in our city are getting younger. And so that is something, those are convenient facts that people don't like to talk about or don't want to ignore. And a lot of times we don't want to talk about it because, unfortunately, a lot of those people who are engaged in that look like us. And I get that that's not a popular thing to say or a popular opinion, and it's a touchy thing.
Oh,
but
that's a part of it. That's a part
of it. It's the truth.
That is the truth. This is all about because they look like us. Because it's not about not being around fights, because fights happen down there at the Dora. It's not about being away from gun violence, because they might be packing down there. We got an open carry state. So it's not about any of that. It's about, I don't want to be around these young black people. And I say bravo, Cincinnati, because we are world class at building these polite barriers between us and the less desirables. And the less desirables in Cincinnati is still poor, non-white people. And so bravo, Cincinnati, way to go. We do.
Can I finish my point about 4th Street Live? 4th Street Live in Louisville has, for a while, was the most, it was known for discrimination. You'd go down there and they would turn you away. And at first they would say your shirt's not good, tucked in enough. You come in with a better shirt tucked in, oh, your shoes are wrong. And then after a while, they started rallying against the 4th Street Live. And like Nathan just said, these are subtle redlining things like, we want to bring people down here, but we can get more people will come down here and maximize the profit if we keep that element out of here. And the element that Nathan was talking about is the 18-year-olds or the young people who hang out Fountain Square and down. And they're trying to do something better.
Let me say this, and this is what I think the nuance of what the conversation is that's being lost. And I'm not unsensitive or even totally 100% disagree with everything that what you say. But the reality is people don't want to be around violence. That's the number one thing that you want to that you have to acknowledge. Is it's not that people don't want to be around black people. Look, they'll take your money just like they will anybody else's. They want you down at that Bengal Stadium, the Red Stadium, because they want your dollars. What they don't want down there is people who are going to come around there and act a fool. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And I think we do a disservice sometimes when we want to lump in this notion that, they just want to keep black people out. Well, they may want to keep a certain type of black person out. And guess what? Most of y'all on this thing don't want them black people around you either. So let's just be honest. I'm sick of people sitting here talking about like you just want to hang around the thugs and the gangsters and people who are capable of perpetuating violence, especially with your kids around. Stop. The reality is I love black people too. Kevin. But the bottom line is none of us want to be around the violence. And that's basically what it comes down to.
That's not the bottom line. That's not the bottom line at all. Okay. No. And like I told you, them putting up a little barrier with this little rent-a-cop right there is in no way, shape, or form preventing you or buffering you from any violence whatsoever. You are no safer from gun violence when you go down to the banks today or this weekend than you were before they put this barrier up. Stop believing these illusions. This guy ain't stopping nobody. If somebody coming down there with a weapon, they're coming down there with a weapon.
They've only been at it for a week. I think we'll see. I think
he ain't stopping. I mean, just think about it logically.
Will bear out over time. We'll see.
Think about it logically. He ain't stopping nothing if something's going on. This is about they don't want to be around this desirable element. And Kevin, you said a few things that just factually, I know that's your opinion. You're welcome to it, and I value it. But factually, I have seen no evidence whatsoever to say that those crowd of people down there, the ones they're trying to stay away from them, I don't know if they're thugs. I don't know what crimes they've committed. See, we're doing it again because there was a few crimes committed.
Nathan, I'm not talking about.
We're making the same mistake that we say.
I'm sorry, a few crimes, 15 shootings.
Go get the people who did the shootings. Don't just blanketly think that everybody in that crowd that look like what you think the shooters look like or somehow.
But Nathan, you're falling for the trap. You're falling for the trap that Tarris set up. You're falling for the trap that Tarris set up.
No, actually, I'm not.
This is an age thing. It has nothing to do with color or how you dressed or any of that. It's that if you are not over the age of 21, you don't belong. That see, you took
That
the
is
cheese.
the lie.
You took
That's true.
you took the Tarris cheese, and that's why I was trying.
Tarris
That's why I was trying to keep
gems.
the argument
That
from
was
there,
not.
from going there. Let's talk about what it is. But
Yeah,
y'all
we're talking about
y'all
what
want
it
to take
is.
the argument someplace else to where it ain't. And you swallowed Tarris's cheese whole. He got
No,
you.
I didn't.
Oh.
I'm giving
that wasn't
Tarris-
even nothing like that. That wasn't
I'm
even no
giving
trap. That
Tarris
wasn't.
his props because Tarris
Thank
said
you, Nathan.
Tarris said what a
Man,
lot of
everybody
people.
on here think Tarris crazy. Now you agreeing with him. What that said?
Yeah, I should.
Well, no.
Tarris crazy.
I think
crazy.
no. Listen, I think he's
Until
well,
sometimes half
I think he's
crazy.
half
Half crazy. Yeah. Well, Tarris is half crazy,
I
but
am half crazy.
on
I
that
believe
take,
that.
he was right. We should, especially as black people, we should be looking up. Anytime they put up a barrier, and we know that it's privileged white people on the inside and black youth on the outside, we should be paying attention to what happens in navigating that barrier, that demarcation time between the people who we want to party with and the people that we don't. Like I said, Cincinnati is so good. We are world class. We should package it, bottle it, and sell it around the world in terms of building up these polite, pretty barriers and making everybody think it's for everybody's good. And it just looks so good. It's a wall between you and the American dream. And it's a shame. But again, props and bravo to Cincinnati. Good job, Cincinnati.
Before you go to the next topic, I one of our listeners sent me a text. May I read it to you?
That's gonna be good. This is gonna be good.
No, it's not. It's on the previous subject, but
All
I
right.
think this is interesting. So if you don't mind, this is from a woman, okay? And she was listening to
Watch,
our
I'm gonna say
earlier
she's gonna agree with me.
segment. She goes, oh, I wouldn't count on it. She goes, oh my God, your podcast of 4 men is talking about how women think, feel, go through menopause. Stop. She says, not trying to be harsh, but really, really poor form. Women get very offended by
Well, let's
this.
just say Tarris was the one who brought up menopause.
Well, it's all Tarris's
again, the
fault,
same
there's no
brother,
question.
Tarris, the same brother that y'all just now defended was the one who brought up menopause. I didn't mention menopause one time. So
Okay, and I won't mention it again.
I don't take Tarris's cheese. Y'all take Tarris's cheese.
No, I'm gonna show this to my wife. I'm gonna show the menopause part to my wife, and she's gonna be like, I am very proud of you for standing up and mentioning and saying something and raising awareness about perimenopause and menopause.
Tarris, I want you to know, I don't know your wife, but I admire her because if she's been able to, interact with you all these years, she's obviously a woman with great patience and understanding.
Yeah.
Kevin, I got $1.
Hey,
I got $1 US too. I want to bet you $1 US that within 3 months, we're gonna hear about some discrimination stuff going on down there at that door, or during that door down first. At $1 US.
So Nathan, I want to make one point of clarity because I've seen a few people ask this question when they ask me about the question about who are the thugs and gangsters, and this is the part that, again, where nuance comes in. No, I'm not talking about everybody that goes down there. I'm talking about the people who actually perpetuate the violence. That's who I'm talking about. The people who commit the acts of violence, the people who get into the fights and the things, and that's whether they're black or white. I'm not assigning a color to that. You might have wanted to assign a color to that based on what I said or what your perception of what you think a thug or a gangster is. For me, that ain't automatically a black person. Might be for you, but that ain't what it means when I say it. And so I'm talking about violent individuals. I'm not talking about anybody who's going down there trying to have a good time. I don't think about black people in that way. You may think that other people, white people, might think about black people that way. I don't know. I'm not in their heads, but that's not how I think. But I'm talking about people who go down there with the intention of doing bad things and have perpetrated bad things. That's who I'm talking about. So I don't want my words to be misconstrued.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified it because, that's how it came across. And I was trying to steer it in a different direction, but you don't know. Like I said, so what? It's been 15 shootings down there. So what, Ann? That doesn't mean that if you close off this, you're going to stop the shootings. You don't even know who committed the shootings. You just can't blanketly blame the entire crowd of teenagers just because you think they should be at home, which I agree. The other thing I would have loved to see about this, but it's just not the Cincinnati way. So I've given up hope on it. What would have been a nice part, or maybe this might happen. I'll be optimistic about it, even in Trump's America. But it would have been nice to see, okay, if you're going to put up these barriers here, well, there's still an issue. You know, you've got a lot of teams on the bank. And with all the great capitalistic minds and creative thinkers, it's just sad, but so Cincinnati that we can't come up with nothing, right, to address that because it's still there. They just can't get through that particular barrier, but they're still at the banks. But you know, it is what it is. I know what Phil's gonna say. Midnight basketball, right? Right, Phil? You don't like the midnight basketball programs?
You took the words
Yeah,
out of
yeah, I
somebody's
know.
mouth. I don't know.
But let's go on to a lighter subject. With a heavy question though, what happened with Shador Sanders? He was projected to go maybe top 5, top 10. He went 144th, and I've heard all kind of things. I'm sure many of you, if you follow the story, if you've seen it too. I just want to get your gut. Like, what happened? And my question is, he landed with the Cleveland Browns. You may or may not know their situation, but he's on an NFL team, right? 5th round draft pick. Is this a blessing in disguise? I've heard that many times in the media for Shador Sanders.
What's the blessing you're referring
People, I
to?
guess, are saying that he eventually landed with an NFL team. He's with the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, he dropped, cost him a lot of money, but at least he's with a team. So
I understand what you mean. I've read a few things, but what do you
Well-
mean a blessing in disguise? I
Well,
just
a
don't
lot of people are
understand what
saying
they're referring
that,
to
you
here.
know, it was a big setback for him to not get drafted higher. There was a lot of expectations.
I get that. So why is it a blessing?
I'm asking the question. I'm saying
But I don't understand.
It's a bunch of crap. That's what it is. It's look, if you want to make the argument that it's a blessing to be drafted in the NFL, period, absolutely, I will agree with you on that. But Shador Sanders was, by anyone's estimation who looked at this and was doing evaluations and prognostications, had him no worse than the third best quarterback in this draft. Many of them had him second, and some arguably said he was the best. So for a player of his caliber to slide to the 5th round is unprecedented. I think people have said that. And then you find yourself drafted into a situation with a team that has, no offense to any Cleveland Browns fans, but have had a history of futility and currently have, including Shador Sanders, 5 quarterbacks on their roster. So I wouldn't venture to say that he even got drafted into the best situation by going to the Cleveland Browns. So yes, he's in the league, he's on the team. Is it a blessing? No, I wouldn't say that. You lose out on millions of dollars. You've been nationally embarrassed. You've had your reputation besmirched. You basically have had the entirety of the league tell you that you're persona non grata by passing over you for 148 picks. I don't see anything that is a positive or in this for Shador Sanders or the way that he even drew it up, short of the fact that he's in the league. Look, I feel like from the beginning, this has been and he's not blameless in this. Look, I said this. He's Deion Sanders' son, but he ain't Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is arguably one of the greatest athletes, if not NFL player of all time. Deion Sanders has the track record, the awards, the recognitions, the championships to walk around with the swagger that he's got, right? Deion can talk how he talk and walk how he walks because he's backed it up through a career of what he's done. Shador Sanders ain't Deion Sanders, and he was carrying himself like he was his pops, and you just can't do that. He could not do that. He ain't got the skins on the wall that his dad got. He was trying to, I think he was trying to live off of that a little bit, live a little bit off of the Sanders name. And again, I don't say this in any way to disparage his skills and his ability, but the way he sort of disrespected the process, him and Deion, hey, these are teams that if certain teams come at us, we may not play for them. And how he conducted himself in some of the interviews as the reporting is coming out, was that of someone who, and you've heard it, just sort of felt like they were better than maybe a lot of people thought that they were. Look, he was not Shador Sanders wasn't Peyton Manning. I've heard that too. It's like, yeah, let's slow our roll. Shador Sanders is good, but damn it, he ain't Peyton Manning, even when Peyton Manning was coming out. Let's stop that noise there.
Well, let me reshuffle the question. So, as relates to Shador Sanders, Did he drop because of meritocracy, or did he drop because the NFL plantation was cracking the whip on him?
The latter.
Cracking
The latter.
whip.
It had nothing to do with football. I mean, if you're evaluating Shedeur Sanders purely based on his talent, you're not going to tell me that he's the 6th or 7th or whatever he was best quarterback in his draft.
What you think, Phil?
That was the point that I was kind of getting to. I think he slipped for all of the reasons that I said. The way that he was carrying himself, and the NFL owner said, you're not going to do that. We don't like that. In fact, I think Boomer Esiason came out on a podcast and reported that he had heard from, at least 3 or 4 organizations that owners came and told their general managers, take this dude off our board. We're not even going to consider drafting him because of the way he was conducting himself during the process. And so absolutely they were trying to send a message to him. This had Shedeur Sanders sliding in the 5th round had less to do about his skill on the field and more to do with what they thought of him as a person.
What you think, Phil?
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday, I had like a long conversation with a friend of mine. He's a black guy, and I say that because he used the same words, actually, especially that you used, Nathan. The plantation, and as well as what Kevin said. His opinion was that the reason he was drafted is that the NFL was trying to sort of send him a message that, you pop off too much. And apparently he is kind of arrogant guy. Like some of you said, I don't follow it that well. But they were trying to send him a message. Now, I then said to my friend, okay, but what does that to do with that he's black? And he goes, well, he said to me, don't you agree that if he was white, they might have still, he was agreeing that, no matter what color he was going to, if you will, get punished for having popped off a lot. But he was saying it would be even more so because he was black. So,
I agree I disagree that he would not have, that had he been, because we've seen white players who've done it. Baker Mayfield, to a certain degree, has a chip on his shoulder. Joe Burrow. I sort of reject, and this is one of the things that I think is black men or black people in general that we often chafe at. A black man's confidence is viewed by a white audience as arrogance, and that was kind of the word that you used, Phil. I'm not saying that, you meant it.
Yeah, and I haven't really listened to him do interviews, so I'm talking from ignorance on that. But the impression was, in one way or another, he's kind of, I don't know what's the word, kind of
flamboyant.
More, again, I don't listen. My sense from my friend was that he kind of pops off a lot and acts arrogant. That was my sense from him. But I haven't heard any interviews.
He's a confident young man. Right. He's a confident young man. He's definitely confident in himself. And I think, unfortunately, too often, too many times, confidence or overconfidence expressed by black people is viewed as arrogance. Look, Joe Burrow is every bit as confident and self-assured as Shedeur Sanders is, but nobody is calling Joe Burrow arrogant. Now, again, Joe Burrow has proven it on the pro level. He's got the skins on the wall to back it up. And this is why I say, like, Shedeur needed to slow down a little bit because he had not yet proven on a professional level what he was exuding. He may have been a little bit too confident. He might have needed to back down on that a little bit. Like I said, Deion can do it because he's got the skins on the wall. Deion can walk the walk. He walked the walk. He talked the talk, and he did everything. And so everything Deion Sanders says, he can say it, and he can say it with confidence because he's done it. And there's nothing that anybody can say about it. But Shedeur is his son, but he ain't Deion. And so that's where I said, like, it's cool that he has his confidence, and nobody is saying that, but he needed to come down a little bit. Rolling in with the entourage and some of these things, these reports that you're hearing about how he was carrying himself in interviews, that's not going to come off well.
Did he make some comments at the combine?
Yeah, that's not going to come off well when you're trying to get the job. Get the job first.
His dad,
right? Like that. The primary thing is get the job first, then you can do that. But I think he probably did some things that hurt him in that process.
Yeah, go ahead, Tarris.
It was for sure some humble pie. They fed him some humble pie, which it's subjective whether he deserved it or not. I do agree with Kevin that they want to keep Black confident men from being as confident as they want to, but that's a thing. But Shedeur Sanders with the Louis Vuitton robe on, sitting there comes a point to where maybe he didn't want to be buck broken. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he said he knew what he had to do to get that big contract if he wanted to. He knew he could have played the game and did all the interviews and went to the interview classes that they provided Colorado, the media classes, the media day classes. He decided, since he had enough money in the NIL, that he's going to wear his $250,000 medallion. He's going to do the things that he wanted to do because he was making, in my opinion, making a statement. It cost him, but he's already got the money. And as from an owner standpoint about drafting him, subjectively opinion, why would you want that cancer in your locker room? Why would you want somebody like that coming in your locker room with that kind of attitude that's ready to go against your organization when you're trying to win national championships? It's bigger than Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur made this the draft was all about him, like having the draft parties and the entourage and all that kind of stuff, and it kept drawing. So humble pie was definitely needed, but how do you butt break somebody who's not willing to be butt broken though? So if he's going to the NFL right now and they're trying to break him and say, are you going to learn your lesson now? We dropped you down to the fifth round. And from Deion Sanders' perspective, as him being his father, they wouldn't give Deion Sanders an offensive coordinator job at Florida State that he asked for. They sent him to Jackson State to do a job at Jackson State that he had to turn around there, and he worked his way from the bottom so he could work his way up to Colorado to give Travis Hunter and the boys a chance. I believe that Sanders' boy is going to work his way up from the bottom and be like a Tom Brady or something like that if he changes his mindset. If he continues to have that mindset of, oh, you ain't going to break me, bling, bling, look at me, I got my chains, I got my rings, I got my watches, I don't think he's going to be any good for anybody except himself, Shedeur Sanders. But if he would humble himself, eat some humble pie, and work this NFL system to be able to touch the millions of people that he'd be able to touch in a correct way, I believe that it'll be sent. But right now, humble pie, and he got what he deserved.
Yeah, every once in a while, something happens where, you kind of bump against the matrix and you kind of see the real world, right? And we just saw it this past weekend. Like, they tell us that the NFL is a meritocracy. Meritocracy is all about if you work hard. And then every once in a while, they show you like, nah, we got control. And I don't know. I wasn't there, but let's just say that a lot of the reports that I've read, let's say they're true, that he had a certain attitude, a certain way he brought himself into the interview, and it rubbed people the wrong way. Let's say his father doing an interview, I don't know, within the last month on a podcast talking about like he was one of the Mannings. Like, we may not choose this team. We might, come on, bro. I just feel like, and I'm just giving an opinion because everybody else is, because I really don't know. But I just feel like that perhaps the Sanders read the room wrong and just played the wrong hand. I think he's a good guy. I think he can be all those things. But I think he played the Shedeur NIL Deion Sanders son card. But when he walked into those rooms, perhaps if what people are saying is true, he should have played the humble pie card. Because it's all about getting to the NFL at that point. You want to get in as high as possible. I think they read it wrong. They thought they sent him in there and jacked them all up, and you Deion Sanders Jr. and you gonna do this and legendary, and it just was the wrong card at the wrong time.
My friend who talked to me yesterday says apparently they do interviews with teams in advance of the draft, and apparently, I haven't read it, but according to my friend, because he was kind of giving me both sides of the argument. Okay. He said that apparently he was maybe overconfident is the word, but it sounds like in the interviews he was.
He rubbed people the wrong way. He didn't do anything that anybody else didn't do.
He rubbed people the wrong way.
He just rubbed people the wrong way for whatever reason.
He rubbed people the wrong
and his
way.
race didn't make it any easier. In fact, it made it a lot easier to hate against him. Like, once that avalanche starts going, if you're a black guy, what we've learned is once the avalanche of public opinion inside these little corridors of decision making, once they start to turn against you and you're a black person, that mofo goes straight down the island. He goes straight down the ramp and down the cliff. If he were white, he may have been, it might have slowed down enough for him to be looked at a different way. Hey, he's not cocky. He's just supremely arrogant. And America loves arrogant white men that score touchdowns.
Hey, let me,
Well, my friend made to that point. My friend made the point that the Pittsburgh Steelers, their coach is black, and they apparently really, according to what I don't follow pro football, my friend says they really needed a quarterback. They need a quarterback. They don't have 5 like the Browns have, and this was his counter to saying, maybe the race didn't have anything to do with it. Maybe meaning like if he was a white guy and he acted like that.
Here's why I'm not really. Here's why I'm not willing to go. I'm not going to say that race was zero factor, but I think it's an overstated factor in this case. And here's why. Let's not forget that the number 1 draft pick in the NFL draft was a black quarterback, Cam Ward. Okay, the NFL, if nothing else, is all based on talent. And this is why I say that Shador's talent did not match up with the negatives that many NFL teams felt about him, whether that was how he carried himself, his attitude, or whatever. Because here's the reality. If they felt like Shador was a baller like that, they're not good. Look, they draft guys that the Baltimore Ravens took a guy who had basically 2 sexual assault charges against him, 1 in high school and 1 in college. Many NFL teams took him off the board, but all it takes is 1 to really let. So talent, and this guy is one of I think he led college football in sacks. Like many people wanted the Bengals to take him, but the dude still got drafted. So what I'm saying is that the NFL, that talent trumps everything. I mean, even the Browns organization themselves, they had a dude, Josh Gordon, a few years ago who was in and out with, with drug situations and drug issues. So the NFL is a organization that, regardless of what challenges you might have, they will take a chance on you if the talent is there, if it's undeniable. You may slide a little bit, but they're eventually going to. Somebody is if you got that level of talent, you're not going to make it past the 2nd or 3rd round if you're that type of player in the NFL. So I'm not saying that race had 0 to do with it, but it is a harder case to make when you look at the sheer number of. I'm willing to say that it was more of a Deion Sanders factor. It was more of a Sanders family factor.
That played a role.
Than it was a race factor.
But the NFL is not a meritocracy. It is not a meritocracy. It's got meritocracy type of elements, but at the end of the day, it's about people making decisions about other people. And Cam Ward, even though he's super talented, and I saw some highlights, and I'm like, wow, he can really throw that football. He could have talked himself out of the number 1 spot too. If you go into that interview and you ain't talking right, you go and you tick somebody off. I don't care what your talent is, because they really don't need Cam Ward. The NFL doesn't need any of those players. Yeah. There is no player that is so talented that the NFL needs you. Every last one of them are expendable. If you come between the overall interests of the owner class, that's Joe Burrow, that's Mahomes, that's anybody, because the shield is bigger than all of them. So
that's what I want to say about race too, because NFL employs more black millionaires than any other corporation in the world. Any other corporation in the world. NFL employs more black millionaires. So
I like the way that sounds.
So Shador coming in there to, like you said, the owner establishment group, he's nothing but another N-word. Yeah. A rich one. A big one with that one with the chain over there. With Deion Sanders. We had a lot of problems out of Deion with that old flashiness. We want to get more N-words like that.
Hey, well, they didn't have problems with Deion. They didn't have problems with Deion with his flashiness. Every owner in the NFL wanted Deion Sanders when he was playing. That's where I'm saying about the talent issue. And you're absolutely right, Nathan, because Chad Johnson or Ocho Cinco, whatever he's going by, I can't remember what he's using now. But at any rate, he said that very same thing. He said that, no matter how talented you are, you're not going to be bigger than the shield. And NFL has a way of letting every player know that. And I think Shador went into the process, instead of saying he'd be lucky to be in the NFL, he went in with an attitude like the NFL will be lucky to have me. And that didn't work for him.
Yeah.
They just played the wrong hand. He's got that in him. I personally, when I look at Shador, I don't see him. I think he is trying to live up and be what his father was. I don't really see that in him. I don't think it's authentic to who he is. I don't think he's really a flashy person, quite honestly, but I don't really know the guy. I'm just watching TV and separate interviews, but man, the Shield is everything. And look at the NFL. I mean, they just have such a great product. They really do. They have a product that wins no matter what. Contrary to what people say, the NFL doesn't, I don't think they really care who wins the championship because it becomes a beautiful story no matter what. Whether it's, a team like Mahomes and the Chiefs, they can show the story of a dynasty, or it's a franchise like the Bengals who never won before. It's like they win no matter what, and they even won with Shador Sanders. I mean, the coverage of the draft was through the roof because people watching to see if Deion Sanders' son was gonna get drafted, and now the Cleveland Browns are gonna get a bump because the whole football world is gonna be watching to see the drama. So, I mean, these billionaires have such a great product, and it's like woven into the fabric of Americana at this point, where it's like we discuss it even though we're not a football or a sports related show.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nathan. I'm glad you said that because when you think about it, by the time you get to day 3 of the draft, most people have tuned out. Like people watch that Thursday night is the first round, obviously. Second, you probably watch on Friday. Probably fewer people probably watch it on Friday than that first round on Thursday. But I guarantee you, and I'd love to see when these ratings come out. I would love to see how day 3, how the Saturday ratings of the draft for the NFL compared this year to previous years, just simply by the fact that Shador Sanders had not been drafted, and if people were continuing to watch just to wait for that moment to see when he was going to get drafted and by who. And you're exactly right. Like, I don't know this because I haven't seen the ratings, and it'll be interesting. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of the more higher rated third rounds of the NFL draft in terms of viewership, in recent years, just simply because of that factor.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, and it says NFL draft draws 13.6 million viewers in second most watched first round. So a little bit of indication there that he has some momentum, people just tuning in. And then that doesn't even count all of the reposts and stuff that people do on social media and TikTok, and people was posting about it. What did you think about the prank? The prank that somebody played on. Did you see that, Phil? Somebody played a prank. You didn't see it? Yeah.
No,
Tell
me what you're referring to.
The moment, right, that the NFL sells for the draft is when they've got the shot of the family along with the potential pick, and he gets that phone call. Well, somebody fake called Shador Sanders and fake drafted him, and then like hung up on him and was laughing.
Well, it wasn't just. Wait a minute, Phil. Before you respond,
it wasn't just Shador.
You need all the information. It wasn't
okay.
Just
give us all the information. Good.
Yeah, it wasn't just anybody. It was the son of a coach with the Atlanta Falcons who had sort of left his iPad available, and it had the phone numbers of a lot of the draft prospects in it, and his son pulled it out and made the call. So it wasn't just anybody who was doing the prank. This was actually the son of an NFL, I think, like executive or a coach with the Atlanta Falcons. So that's critical. Yeah,
it is critical. Yeah, you could tell Dad was trying to keep his job because he put out a statement immediately. He told the whole story about how his son got into his laptop. His son apologized, so they backed away from it. And I don't know. Shador seemed to take it on the chin and keep on moving. They made a joke about it. Him and his brother have been putting out videos on their YouTube channel making jokes about him going in the fifth round and having to cut back on spending now because he didn't get the contract. And I'm like, wow, it's just amazing through video to be able to see how people are reacting to things that are happening to them in the real world.
Yeah, I think that's a product of this generation, though. I mean, I think the prank call is sort of like a product of this social media generation. I think how Sanders is handling it is a result. I mean, look, these young people today, and I say young people because, there are people who are my age and older who are into this social media, but this is primarily, I mean, social media, the way things are lived now is primarily a young person's game. And this is how they live their lives out loud in these ways on social media in ways many of us could not understand. I mean, if you talk to people over a certain age, they would probably not be out on social media in the wake of this doing some of the things that Shador is doing. also, everybody is looking for that viral moment. That's what this prank was all about.
Well, they got it.
This is an opportunity for somebody to get their 15 minutes of fame.
Well, this is an opportunity for those young men. If I was them, I would tell them, you should start a prank YouTube channel now. You just did the biggest prank of the last decade. So why don't you build off of that and start creating some content? That's what they should.
Yeah, if Daddy ain't already killed his son yet, that might be a possibility for him. But I doubt very seriously he's going to be doing much of anything. Sometime.
I mean, MTV had something. It was somebody many years ago. They was pranking celebrities. He can start a whole channel just pranking.
Ashton Kutcher, was it? Was it Ashton?
It was Ashton Kutcher, right? Just pranking NFL or sports related guys or something like that. I could see it working for him, especially with this little notoriety that he has. Being notorious on the internet can be very profitable. It can be very profitable,
or it can hurt you too. I want to say about Shedeur, from being outspoken. I know I've been passed over by several jobs because of my online presence and the things that I say. Like when it comes to me and somebody else to get a job, I know for a fact they're going to hire that somebody else because I'm not buck broken. I'll say whatever I want to say whenever I want to say it.
It's just something about that imagery in my head every time you say that. I would never tell a grown man what to say. But
it's
really.
Not a good image. It's not something I want to get out of my head.
I think it's overkill for the topic, but I'm not trying to tell Brother Tarris.
Hey man, look, here's what I say. I think there's a difference between being buck broken and being smart. And I think Shedeur Sanders, there was a way that he could have maintained himself, but been smart enough to get the bag. Get the bag first. The main objective is to get the bag. Get the bag.
Or maybe play one season
once you
and
get
do
the
well.
bag, then you can do what you want to do, right? Like he had not earned that place yet to be able to do what he was doing. And it's not about being less of who you are or whatever, but it's the reality of how things operate. If there is something that's meaningful to you and you want to try to secure it, there are just certain things that you're going to have to. There's certain things that you're going to have to do. And if you're okay with not having that, then and you're saying, hey, I'm not willing to do this to get this, that's fine. A lot of people make that choice every day. But then you can't complain about it in retrospect because that's your choice to say, hey, I'm not willing to compromise here in order to get that. And so I'm cool with it, right? And, Colin Kaepernick kind of took that route where he said, hey, there's certain things that I'm just not going to do, or I'm not going to compromise in certain areas. And it cost him. It cost him the rest of his NFL career.
You brought up Kaepernick. People compared this to Kaepernick.
Yeah.
You see the comparisons?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, somebody else, a different player in a different situation would have made a different choice, and I think everybody's got to make that choice for him. Last point I'll make on this, Nathan, and this kind of goes back to a conversation we were having earlier a few pods ago about Bronny James. And I think there's something to be said for when you have a world famous athlete, the greatest of all time in their respective sport, and they have a son who is pursuing their dreams. Like I see a lot of similarities between how Deion handled Shedeur and how LeBron handled his son. And I think it's a positive thing. It's sort of like this positive building up, uplifting, talking positively about your son. I mean, if you think about the way that LeBron talked about Bronny, hey, he better than half the guys in the league right now. If you listen to the way that Deion Sanders talked about Shedeur, it's this supreme belief and confidence and uplifting and promoting of their kids that any father would do for their son, especially one on that level. And while that's a great thing, I also think in this case, Deion Sanders might have made it seem like Shedeur was actually better than he was. Like
that's
even
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, no, but there is the reality. Again, I'm not faulting him as a father, just like I wouldn't fault LeBron James as a father. I think that's natural. But I think there is how you view your son as a father, and then sort of what the reality of where they are actually, where they may be at a certain point actually is.
The only thing I would say to that is with all these football guys, they great in college, put up these big numbers. and they get to the pros, they don't wash out. So until he straps it up, and like you said earlier when you started this conversation, or we started this conversation, until they strap up and we don't really know what Shador or Cam Ward or really any of these people are going to be. I mean, past this prologue. And if that's the case, the Sanders kid will probably be a good guy. I just feel like when Dion went on that podcast and was talking about how, yeah, if we don't get the city we want, I just feel like that was too much. It's one thing to say my son is the best, but when you're saying that you're basically going to try to conspire, right, to overlook the pick of the teams who are picking to fit you, I just feel like that rubs people the wrong. That would rub me the wrong way.
But you know where that came from, though? You know where that came from?
Going too far. You can give props to your son, but that goes too far.
No, that came from Dion himself because he did the same thing when he came out. Dion manipulated the draft because he wanted to be in Atlanta. And Dion did that same thing himself when he came out, right? And this is what I'm saying. This was kind of my point about where I think it's hard for great athletes to see sometimes that their sons are not them. And that's where I'm saying, like, I'm there with the promotion and the but I think Dion, much to Shador's disservice, read their own press clippings and drank their own Kool-Aid about the fact that Shador was greater than he actually was.
But that's
Dion thought that he could do that with his son because that's what he did. And it worked for him because Dion was a supremely talented athlete and his son is good, but he ain't Dion.
We don't know that yet. Shador's legacy, legendary it might be, or it may not be. It's just unwritten. We don't know. He's got to get on the field.
I'm talking about coming out of college. I'm talking about even coming out of college. I'm talking about coming out of college.
I think the bigger thing is, like I said, I'll leave it alone. I just feel like his father challenged the whole system by saying that we was going to try to pull a Peyton Manning. I think the Mannings got away with it because let's say they're white. Okay, great. But that's the Mannings. And that doesn't mean you get to pull that. And when you do, you got to make sure you holding all the cards because it's a one-shot deal. And obviously they weren't holding all the cards. You're telling other teams that you're going to spend all year scoping me out. But because I don't like your city, I'm just going to blow you off in the interview. I just feel like that is just bad.
Let's remember this with the Mannings. They didn't do that with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was the consensus #1 pick. He was going
right. They did it with Eli.
So that was Eli that the Mannings did that with. They did that with his son Eli. Now
that's a bridge too far. I think it was a bridge too far this time, and it really rubbed, even up to ownership. I think it rubbed them the wrong way. And because of Dion and race, it didn't make it any easier to not like them and jump on board with the bandwagon. So I think that's what happened. And they taught him a lesson like, no, you're not going to tell us where your son's going to go. No, we're going to tell you, and he'll be lucky to go there. And I think that's something that's super black people. I think that's the race doesn't even matter on some levels. I think that if you're a human being and somebody comes at you like that, and you got this big opportunity and they coming at you like, it's just natural to push back on that. And then the race thing probably could have just made it even worse. I don't know.
Hey man, look, if Shador Sanders, I stand on this 10 toes down. If Shador Sanders was a generational talent, Deion Sanders could have done the same thing that he did. And he would have still been drafted in the top 5. I mean, that's just a fact. It's just a fact, Nathan. The NFL is not going to pass on a generational talent.
They will,
because they don't like your attitude. Look,
they do it all the time.
Cam Newton didn't do what Deion Sanders did, but they still drafted Cam Newton #1, and Cam Newton had every bit the swag, every bit the confidence, arrogance, if you want to say it, that Shador Sanders had. You know what the difference between Cam Newton and Shador Sanders was?
When he went into the interview,
Cam Newton won a Heisman Trophy.
When he went into the interview, he ate the humble pie, and he just did his interview probably.
Cam Newton told him he wanted to be, in an interview, Cam Newton said he wanted to be, I can't remember the exact words, but he said he wanted to be a superstar celebrity.
Good, he should have. He should have.
So this is what I'm saying. Like,
his father is not Deion Sanders.
You gotta recognize that there's a difference between saying Shador Sanders is good and Shador Sanders is a generational talent. And I
We
don't
don't
think
know yet. We don't
Sanders,
know what he's going to be.
at least not to this point, he is not regarded as a generational talent. If he were, he would have gotten drafted regardless.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. But I'm just saying it's not a meritocracy. And if you go, you could be the best talent that they've ever seen in the world. But if you go in and sit with other human beings and you rub them the wrong way, it don't matter. The NFL does not need your generational talent because you know what? There's always a narrative about the next generational talent. They don't need these players at all. The players, I mean, they really do, but because there's such a money difference, they don't really need the players. The players need them a whole lot more because you get a lot of guys that love to be in the NFL. Love to be. The NFL is never going anywhere. Never. They'll always have the best of the best talent, especially in the dystopian tomorrow of Trump's world, where you're gonna have the super wealthy and everybody else is down here breaking rocks to make iPhones. In that world, these NFL high price college athletes are going to step in line so they can live that lifestyle and go to the NFL. And you know what? God bless them. I wish them the best. I wish they were more conscious, like Saquon Barkley. He loves him some Trump now. That's not what I would do, and it makes me think a little bit less of him. But you know what? Trump is so petty. Once he breaks this thing called this rock called Earth, and we're all struggling to live in it, we might have to call Saquon Barkley just to get some water sent to our neighborhood. So, I mean, I can't get too down on the brother because he might be our life raft in 10 years, the way that this Trump regime works. So, you know, we need brothers, hopefully, that's got some kind of connection to reality close to Trump. Because in his world, if you're not close to his regime and his family, so what? You in bad luck, brother.
Didn't Trump make a tweet to get Shadir drafted? Is that what he said? Is that what his narcissism? If that's not narcissism, if that's not narcissism written all over it, like Donald Trump feels like he was the reason why Shadir Sanders got drafted. Come on. But I don't agree with any of that stuff like you guys talking about. Donald Trump's going to ruin our. I just think he's a narcissistic, crazy man. But I don't think. I mean, he's about to be out of here. But that was crazy.
Okay, keep living.
Yeah, he's crazy as a narcissist, right. But nobody's perfect.
I don't think he's single-handedly going to destroy our country. I think that it was going. I mean, and you guys on this podcast, it might be a consistent in the chat that I'm crazy. But if we take people who think like me,
half crazy. I
don't think
we settled that.
Half of the people
crazy
think like me. There's like when you come outside the echo chamber of our our thoughts. There's a lot of people who, if they see me on this podcast, they're like, "Ah, man, you hold your own up there when you're being ganged up by all them libs. You hold your own, So you might think I'm crazy, but I think that I'm right on point to where we need to be. And Shadir Sanders, he's gonna be all right. Y'all know that.
He is gonna be all right. He got a lot of NIL money, so he'll be okay. Man, and what happened to Shadir Sanders?
I don't know if he's going to be all right in Cleveland. I would have liked to have seen him land someplace else. I'm like, there are certain teams where I think he would have been in a better situation there. Cleveland, I mean, what is the last great quarterback that the Cleveland Browns have had? Maybe in the last 20 years, maybe Baker Mayfield,
They say that's where people go to die.
And you see he's balling someplace else. So I'm like, I'm glad the brother made it to the NFL. I'm glad he's on a team, but I sincerely wish he had wound up in someplace other than Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I think it would be better for his career and better for his opportunities, quite frankly.
So let's switch gears here. Cincinnati Public School has rejected the Trump administration's anti-DEI directive. They're one of a handful of public schools in the state of Ohio that did not sign off on it. And in the release that was sent to Cincinnati Public Schools and actually reported in local media, among other things, the Trump administration says that, school districts don't have a right. It's a privilege to get federal money on education, which I disagree with completely. But what do you think about Cincinnati Public Schools standing up against the Trump administration as it relates to DEI? In the statement that I read from Kareem Moffitt, who is the president of the Cincinnati School Board, she said, among other things, I'm just trying to say it succinctly, that the Cincinnati Public School is already in compliance, that they're not discriminating against anybody, right? So it sets up a showdown between the Trump regime and Cincinnati Public Schools. What do you think? Did Cincinnati Public Schools do the right thing, in your opinion, or what do you think in general?
On the outside looking in, from being over here in Kentucky, I believe that this is just another attempt for the setup for the AFCAB peer eval versus if the Corey Bowman makes it out of the primaries, it's going to be another hotbed topic for that. It's going to be Trump versus the city. It's just nothing but another political grandstand for the showdown of 2025 that's going to take place in Cincinnati, Mayor AFCAB peer eval versus the Republican. And if the Republican is Corey Bowman, which is J.D. Vance's brother, this is just going to be another hotbed topic that's going to lead into 2025 November.
Well, I hate to disagree with Tarris again, but first of all, to even characterize the election is going to take place as a showdown, I think, is probably the biggest overstatement maybe on the pod today. I don't think that there will be much of a showdown in that race. Secondly, Cincinnati Public Schools has nothing to do with the mayor. You know, the city has sort of zero influence or say over what, you know, CPS does. I mean, sure, it may be a question that they get asked about, but, you know, they have little influence over that. To the larger question, I love this. I'm glad this CPS is standing its ground and is not falling into this. And I've said this before, that I think more organizations, you know, whether it's CPS or, you know, these universities that are standing up to this intimidation, these bullying tactics that Trump is trying to use. And I like the fact even more so that they went the extra step to say the policies that we're doing, while they might even be categorized as DEI, are not discriminatory. And I think that's the larger conversation that we've had here, is that I've rejected wholeheartedly, is this notion that DEI programming is somehow or another discriminating against anybody, you know, let alone white folks. And so I think that the fact that they're pushing back on that and adding that extra layer into it by saying, no, we're not going to sign it, we're not going to follow this because, one, we're not breaking the law, we follow the law, and there's nothing that we're doing that's discriminatory, comes show to proof that we are discriminating, you know, which I think I wish more organizations would do that to stand up against Trump versus you know, bending over and kissing the knee. So kudos to CPS. Let's hope that they stay in the line. I hope that people in the city, you know, get behind them, that folks don't start getting nervous and getting cold feet and putting pressure on CPS leadership, you know, to try to sign this letter. Let's back them up. Let's support them. And kudos to them for standing their ground.
Your thoughts?
Mine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What really stood out to me when I was reading about this, and I didn't know this, that 25% of the Cincinnati Public Schools funding is from the federal government. Did you guys know that?
I did not know it.
It blows me away. And think about it. That means almost every other equivalent school district is getting the same thing. I mean, this brings up what we talked about, what at least my point of view when we talk about I think about the Harvard thing, is, first of all, the federal government cannot afford this. They're using borrowed money or printed money, but it's the same situation as it is with Harvard. When you are dependent on the public money, you have to do what they want. And I'm sorry for repeating this because, like I said before, but I was on a meeting with Steve Adamowski years ago before we were go on TV, and I just said this one question: if you could give up all the federal money in return for being free of all the handcuffs, all the rules and regulations, would you do it? He said, absolutely, in a heartbeat. And so I think it's time that all these school districts, that we just say, look, we're not going to fund education. The federal government can't afford it. Now, do I hope, as Kevin said, that they stand up to him on this? Sure I do, just like Harvard. But I think the long-term need is to cut off the federal funding for education. I mentioned Hillsdale College one time, that whether I agree with all their politics, they refuse to take any government money, and I think that gives them a lot of freedom.
Just for clarity, do you agree with state funding for schools but not federal funding? Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
So then my answer to that would be is if you are against federal funding going to education, which I disagree with, then I would suggest that, the percentage of our tax dollars that the federal government gets, instead of the federal government taking that, have those tax dollars that we pay into sent to the state, and then
why go through that? Why not just lower the taxes then? Let people keep their own money. I mean, that's
because the reality is that we need funding to pay for education. This is where you and I think we fundamentally differ on this. Is that I see educating the public as an imperative for government. You don't think that the government should have any role in educating?
No. I don't think the federal government should.
Okay, so then that's my reason why you take that money. So if a quarter of the money that schools get are coming from the federal government and they need that money, then that means that money needs to come from somewhere. So if you're going to say no, then let me keep that 25% that the federal government was getting. Let those taxes that are coming out of our pocketbooks go to the state government, and then we need to force the state government to come up with a constitutionally sound funding formula for our public schools, which we know is unconstitutional at the current state. That's what if you're saying the federal government needs to be out of business and let it go to the states, fine.
When you say let it go to the states,
I'm not fine with that.
I don't say the federal government should tax and then send it back, because 25-30% always ends up with the bureaucrats. I'm saying either cut people's taxes or fine. I have no problem if we decide, okay, we're not going to take this federal money, let's increase state taxes. I have no problem with that. I've mentioned before that, in my humble opinion, the 10th Amendment does not give the federal government the right to be involved in education.
Sure it does. Through Congress they can, and that's how they started the Department of Education.
Wait, you know what the 10th Amendment says, right?
No, I can't recall the top of my head.
Well, what the 10th Amendment says is that any power that is not specifically reserved to the federal government in the Constitution belongs to the states.
Right.
I challenge anybody to find me the word education in the Constitution.
Well, it doesn't have to be, right? Because for me,
you don't want to follow the Constitution?
Well, again, you say follow the Constitution. We are following the Constitution because, we currently have a federal Department of Education that has withstood 40 years of counter lawsuits against its very existence. So the fact that it's still here, right, even though it had to endure all those legal battles, tells us that it is constitutional, right? Because, and I just love to have these conversations with you, and then you agree with me every single time, and then you continue afterward to say things, Phil, that that combat what you just said. So here's my point, is that the Constitution is an organic document that was written by the framers so it could be amended and changed way into the future, like right now. Right. So we could address problems and issues that the forefathers, the founding fathers of the constitutions couldn't even foresee. So that's exactly under which the legal rubric and philosophy that we got the Department of Education. And we need the Department of Education to make sure that, we don't have big disparities, right, in terms of access to high quality education from state to state.
Okay, so you're saying we don't have big disparities now?
I'm saying that without the federal government, we would have even wider disparities like we did before we had the Department of Education, right? So yeah, don't take people's cynicism and dissatisfaction about the quality of education and then use that to destroy a program and a process that
what if the quality of our education has correlated downward as federal involvement has gone up?
I don't think so. I think over the last I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I would challenge you on that. I would say that, as I said, there's a lot of cynicism about the quality of public education. A lot of that politically has been created by Republicans.
I'm talking about facts. I'm talking about
facts too. Well, I'm talking about facts too, but in a broader scheme, Phil, just because you and I don't have numbers in front of us, I am conceding to you that there are a lot of people that will look at the quality of their public education and be dissatisfied. But you would have to concede to me that over the last 40 years, public schools have created Nobel laureates, heads of state, heads of business, a whole lot of successful entrepreneurs, a whole lot of successful moms and dads.
I don't deny that at all.
Okay,
I don't know what that has
it's
to do
working.
With federal. I don't deny that.
So it's
and
working.
I also don't deny, to your point, that it is true. The courts throughout the years, this is not just education, it's almost every federal involvement in the states, the courts have approved it. In my humble opinion, they have basically emasculated that 10th Amendment. So I agree with you that they have upheld.
Here's one of the problems with Phil's argument is he wants to say, and he just said this, that as the federal government got more involved, the quality of education went down. Like that is like a super simplistic way of like, assuming that your argument is even right. Like that's a super simplistic way that doesn't take into account the myriad of other factors that have impacted the overall quality of education, including decisions that are made at the state level.
What about what Steve Adamowski said? What's your response on that?
What about the federal regulations? Would they turn?
He'd give up the money in a heartbeat to be done.
What year did he say this?
Be rid of the regulations.
What year did he say this, Phil? When you had this conversation, what year?
I was on city council between 1990.
So that was a different world.
90?
No. I was on city council 93 to 2001. It was somewhere.
That was a different world. I would say two things to that. Number one, that's a different world. And he may have that view, and he's welcome to it. I think anybody, if you ask them that question, right? If everything was equal and they could get
everybody's talking about like people who run schools, not just
I'm just saying.
The street.
I'm sure anybody, but what I'm saying is we take what are really just minor headaches about dealing with the federal government and turn it into a whole philosophy where we don't need the federal government. My God, you might have to send a few more emails. You might have to dedicate a few more hours to fill out a few more forms to get the federal funds to create your programs. But wow, gee whiz. So what?
I think we need the federal government funding education more than we need them funding billionaires and their stock market.
1,000%.
And so, and that's a philosophy, Phil, that you and your buddies over there on the Republican side.
Oh, there you go. Loving man.
Is tax breaks for the rich. I would venture to say that America would be a much better country, well off, if we spent that money educating our kids versus giving billionaires more money that they don't need or that they aren't asking for. And we can always make the argument about what the federal government should be spending money on and what they shouldn't, which is what's at the heart of our politics. The things that you like to spend money on aren't the things that many people agree are in the best interest of the federal government spending money on. And I think that's where it comes down. I got to get ready to bounce here.
Can I say one thing before Kevin and I leave?
Before I leave on Phil, and where I was going is like, James Baldwin had a statement that said, something to the effect of, America is a super complex country that insists on being simple-minded. And the simple-mindedness of that statement, that as federal involvement has gone up, the quality of education has gone down. That's exactly what James Baldwin was talking about, is that there are myriad of factors that we could look at critically and analyze and say, hey, maybe this is why our education system isn't where it needs to be. But this gut reaction to just eliminate the Department of Education and everything that they're doing, and somehow that's going to make education in this country better, I think is the most ridiculous.
Well, it'll save a heck of a lot of federal money.
And here's the critical part, Phil, about why it's so bad. And I can't believe that you're on board with this Trump plan. Is it would be different.
No. What do you mean, Trump?
It would be different. It would be different.
I'm on board with it if he does it constitutionally. Congress is the one that has to.
Well, regardless, you're in favor of getting rid of the Department of Education,
right? The right way.
Here's the insanity behind that is he wants to eliminate it, and he has no plan for what to do afterwards. Like there's been no vision articulated about, okay, the Department of Education goes away, so now is education just going to automatically get better because the Department of Education
on states and local school boards instead of the federal government?
It's a terrible idea.
So where are they going to get a quarter of the money from, Phil?
What do you mean? You're assuming this money is something the federal government just has sitting around. The federal government is $37 trillion in debt. When they get that money, Phil, that isn't real money. That isn't real money.
Well, it's real money. It's real money to the school districts that's getting it. It's real money to the school districts that's getting it.
Our federal government on all levels, is going bankrupt. It's going to only a matter of time before the Chinese stop buying our treasury bonds, and you will see inflation go crazy. We're on a peril, to use Nathan's term, we're on a dangerous path because we owe 37 trillion that will never pay off. And guess what? Now that he's putting this tax cut in and everything, where do you think the money for that's coming from? Do you think they have it in a vault? Heck no. It's the same thing. They're just borrowing it from other countries. And now one of the largest items is, I think on our federal budget, guess what? It's paying interest on the national debt. And they continue to build this thing up.
Yeah, well, when you're giving away $3 or $4 trillion in tax cuts, that's not going to do anything.
And that's why people in my party are hypocrites about that. I agree.
And think about this: all the cuts that Trump and Doge, the Department of grifting everybody, Doge, they've cut so many workers from the IRS department, the Department of IRS, that now they're not even going to be able to fully collect the taxes. So it's like, and you talk about all the time, Phil, Republicans just don't, they have modern day Republicans, when they get in charge, they do not live up to what I understand to be sort of those bedrock Republican principles like lower deficits, and they just don't believe in that anymore. It's do whatever Donald Trump says, even to the detriment of the country. So, Kevin had the deal to roll out. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. If anything you want to say, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, since you gave me the opportunity, I have to jump off. But if you don't mind, I want to share something. I wish Kevin can listen to it. I had an incredible experience yesterday. I got a tour of the Holocaust Center at Union Terminal. Have you guys been to this?
I have not.
I'm telling you, I urge you and everybody listening. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, which is unbelievable. But they gave me a tour. This one here at Union Terminal is incredibly powerful. They focus on the concentration camp survivors that came to Cincinnati, and they have videotapes of all of them, and they have the AI where you can ask them a question. I mean, it's powerful. And I'll tell you three expressions that I got out of that. And again, I encourage everybody to go there. First is, one of these survivors said, what we went through was the worst of humanity. And that's powerful. And the woman who was giving me the tour, the theme they have in this museum is the bystanders versus the upstanders. And this has a lot of applicability today. The bystanders are the ones that just went along with the Nazis, and the upstanders were the ones like Schindler and others that put their lives on the line to do the right thing. And that just hit me in a powerful way. So I appreciate you guys listening. Let me say that.
Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, man. Those kind of things I take my son to. He needs to know all of our history.
I'm taking my kids when they come back.
Yeah,
thanks,
those kind of things get an emotional response out of me. But thank you for putting that on the table for sure. Tarris, anything in your mind, bro, before you roll out?
I'm good. I'll catch y'all next week. Y'all have me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Tarris. Thank you to you. Thank you to Kevin. I thought we had some good conversation. Really appreciate everybody. Really respect everybody's opinion, even though as you can tell, if I disagree, I disagree. But really appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much. We'll be back on Friday, and we'll pick up the conversation then. Friday at 1 p.m. Have a great rest of your day.